Hey, Mark here. A big thank you for listening to this first episode of Movies, Films, and Flicks Data. And if you don't know, you can head to moviesfilmsandflicks.com. Flicks is Flix to read all these data articles that we will be talking about during these 15-minute podcasts. So if you'd love to see the article, just head to moviesfilmsandflicks.com, click on the link that says MFF Data, and check out the post before you listen to the podcast. And if you like, please rate, review, and subscribe, and just let everyone know that you like MFF Data. But thank you, enjoy, and I really appreciate it. Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks Data. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who used to only worry about zombies, but now he worries about zombies and that evil creature from It Follows. It's Adam Clement.
Hello, thanks for having me, Mark.
So when we first met, you told me that whenever you went to shopping malls, you would you would plan on how to blockade it. And then we were talking years later, and you said, now I want to know how to avoid that follows creature. Have you thought any more about that?
I don't know, just based on sort of the data you presented in your stellar It Follows piece, I'm inclined to believe that staying kinetic is probably the best thing you can do, because the moment you're static, you're dead.
Now, I sent you a list of all this data, and you and I have been talking about this data for years now. It feels like we bounce ideas off of each other, so that's why I wanted to have you on this episode. Why did you pick the It Follows episode?
It's a movie. It's an easy answer. It's a movie I definitely enjoy, but I'm also partial to anything that apes Carpenter real hard. And what movie really from the past 10 years, 20 years at that, has really come so close to being like the best John Carpenter movie not directed by John Carpenter? So
just the music, there's a little De Palma thrown in there.
Yeah, a lot of atmosphere.
I liked it. And I guess I picked this one. I was actually about a year into my dumb data when I came across this idea. And I think I did it because, Tarantino talked about this movie. He said that there's no rules for the monster. And then people were saying that the director, David Robert Mitchell, said that we didn't see everything about the monster, so we don't know all of it. So I kind of thought to myself, well, how fast does it move? Does it change? Does it...
Right. There's a lot of avenues for interpretation, which I think that, with the movie like this especially, it's so high concept. You have a couple ideas about the rules, but you're right. You don't really have, it's not like The Ring. It's not like you have 7 days, or it's not like, you're free after a certain point.
And this movie, this data piece, it's very in-depth. And I think that's why it got picked up by a lot of... Yeah, it got picked up by... This is probably my biggest data article, Dread Central, Bloody Disgusting, AV Club, Crack, they all kind of picked it up, which is pretty neat.
Got a lot of love, yeah.
And the thing is, though, is this was one of the easier ones that I've ever put together. I remember while working on the Nick Cage in a bear suit in Wicker Man and just losing my mind. I was watching The Dark Knight Rises trying to figure out how long it took the bat symbol, and I had to quit for 2 weeks just to get it out of my system because I just couldn't figure it out. But this one, it was quite easy once I came up with a few answers. Like once I started watching it
and minimizing the variables, right?
And so when I was watching this, I kind of thought to myself, well, let's say the creature moves at a 20 minutes per mile pace and is always moving. So this creature, it follows always. And the total miles it can cover, obviously, is 72. So in a day, it can move 72 miles.
Right. And you're basing this on informed guesstimates, right? Like we have evidence on screen to kind of wager those numbers. And, right, like how often does it really stand still? Or at least it would have no reason to.
I didn't just come up with this at dinner with my wife one night. That'd be interesting. Hey, Megan, the creature from It Follows.
I actually expected exactly that being the process for all of these theories, is that you overcandle at dinner, you just give her a knowing glance, and she goes, oh, heck, what is it now? What do you got cooking in your head? And you divulge over a glass of wine or something.
And so then I'll kind of drop it on her, and she'll be like, oh, brother. I guess once I did that, though, moves at 20 minutes per mile. And then I just started clocking the times. And another thing that made this really easy for me is that there's a lot of actual locations used, and there's a lot of people who have toured the various areas. So I was able to start putting together a Google map of all the different locations. And you should see me. Like, people get excited when something great happens in their lives. They have something to celebrate. I got excited when I realized that my timetable worked in this movie. I was very happy. It didn't take that long. I was able to knock it out. So I first started clocking the monster when Jay becomes cursed around 9 p.m. at night at the abandoned Northville Psychiatric Hospital, because everything's logged for this. So at 9 p.m., that's when I started doing it. And then through the course of the movie, I figured out that it took place over 15 days. And that was something I wasn't expecting. Same with Jaws of Revenge. That takes place over a much longer period than what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, the movie's so intimate and slow that you don't really expect it to take half a month.
And so 15, but the biggest point of that was their trip up north to, they live in Detroit. So I said that like they drove to the northernmost point in Michigan. I found Whitefish Point. I analyzed a bunch of the homes around there and for areas on the water that were kind of secluded. Google Maps is pretty great. I'm a creeper. So I analyzed that. And then I assumed that the creature had to walk that far to get there, then come back. And there's also a line in the movie when they get back from the beach where the guy says, it's been 3 days and nothing. So during that time, the creature's pissed off walking back from Whitefish Point back to Detroit. So I kind of broke all that down. And no, I just want to say, if you're listening to this, if you've read my data, as always, there's like 0% chance of knowing how far the creature followed. This is just the best educated guess that I can do, but it's super educated. There's just no right answer.
Of course. And you mentioned like you experienced that people who live around those areas have maybe chimed in, and it made me think actually this company, Myers House, North Carolina, runs like on-set cinema. They actually had a screening near one of the schools, I believe. They shot in Detroit.
Nice.
So they actually screened the film, around that area. So I do feel like there are plenty of people who are like rabid about this movie, and especially the locations, because you're right, it is very much Detroit as a character in the film.
I also love how Don't Breathe used Detroit as a character. I'm not the best areas, but I think they really allow it to do that. So
it hammers home the theme that these people are underprivileged and desperate.
And so in this movie, she gets infected at 9 p.m. and then at 12 a.m. she is driven back to her house and they take her to the hospital. So at that point, I actually mapped out the psychiatric hospital to her house and then to the hospital closest to her, then back to her house. And there's no way that the creature could have gotten to her house by then, because where they were at was much further away. So you don't really know where, like, the creature couldn't have made it. So that timeline actually works.
Under the speed that we,
Yeah, it actually works. And then she leaves the hospital and she heads to the University of Detroit around 9:30 a.m. And that's when she sees the creature in class, which works because once she gets to the school, the creature reroutes itself and is pretty close, like mileage-wise, to there. So she sees it, then she runs away.
When the creature reroutes itself, do you think it like stops in place and does like a weird GPS, let's take the longer route thing, or do you think it just like backs up and like does this 3-point turn type deal?
Yeah, it's not like the big old Sam Raimi car 3-point turn, and this is just the thing just immediate. There's no right answer, but I just think it kind of reroutes and then it knows the quickest area. But see, it has to get through doors. It has to bust through doors. So it just takes surface streets. I think if it can cut through a lawn, it might, but it's not messing with fences. I don't think it's climbing fences.
Right. And we also know that, I guess I shouldn't say water because of the pool stuff, but there was that one character in the beginning that tries to get by around a beach, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe thought she was safe that way, which obviously didn't turn out to be the case.
She gives up in the beginning, don't you think?
I don't know. I feel like it's a great stage setter because you open on this woman who's so frantic. And I don't know if I say that she gives up. I mean, maybe in her final moments, of course. Yeah. I mean, you're obviously coming to grips with, I've done all these things, X, Y, Z, to run away and escape, and this is my fate now. So probably, but yeah, it's a hell of an opening.
There's a New York Times video on YouTube where he breaks down the opening. It's really cool. Talks about the camera work. Really, really cool breakdown. The neat thing is during this part, in day 2, she travels 63 miles. And the creature didn't have to walk those 63 miles, but where it went, it would have popped up when it did. So I think that's pretty cool. And then it makes sense that it would make it there in 12 hours. And then at the end of the night, she goes to like Clark's ice cream. Then she drives around for a while and goes home. Then that night at midnight, she's still like awake late at night. And that's when the creature smashes the window, which would make sense according to the 20-minute mile. Then she runs to the park. And then from there, like the next day or that day, they go to the abandoned house. They go to Clawson High School. Then they go to Jeff's home in Troy. And then they go back to Jay's house, and then they drive to Whitefish Point. There's no way the creature could have gotten her that day, and it was just pinballing. Do you think the thing gets frustrated?
I mean, I think most villains, however sentient, yeah, I think so. I mean, we've seen what happens to Michael Myers when he's inconvenienced, right? So I don't see how it would be any different.
So it's just
for something that's like a body hopper of sorts.
It's just grumbling to itself. It sounds like Joe Pesci from Home Alone 1 and 2.
Right. Well, doesn't it like piss itself at some point? Like, yeah. I don't know if I want to go so far as to say it in question is doing that purely for shock and show, but maybe it's just like, this body sucks. I picked a wrong one, or I picked a raw one.
There's some showboating, I'd say.
Oh, sure. I mean, you're not going to just kill people to kill people. You're going to have some fun with it, but it makes me wonder if they're ever like upset that this pod that they're occupying currently is less than ideal.
So day 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9, they're at the beach. And it's kind of weird because when they get to the beach, they drive all night. So I'm thinking they probably slept. They probably got some supplies, got some gas. So I think they took their time getting to the beach house. So all this time, the creature's walking. So day 9, the creature finally gets to the beach after a 352-mile walk and gets his hands on Jay. And then day 10, she gets to the hospital. She wrecks her car. But she's far enough for them to grab her. Then they go back, take her to the hospital. That's when she passes the curse to Greg. And 3 days go by when the creature's still not there. So it's still walking back from Whitefish Point. And eventually gets his hands on Greg, kills him. And then she realizes it. She drives around town. You don't know if she sleeps with those guys or not. And then she goes to the swimming pool to attack the creature. Mm-hmm. So, and I found the locations of those places as well, where they went. And I'm telling you, dude, the 20-minute mile, according to my math, works. So I think it's kind of fun it was fun once it all came together.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with this many variables and guesstimates, seeing it come together in a plausible puzzle, right, is probably somewhat rewarding.
So in the end, the creature walked about 1,017 miles while hunting Jay.
Is there like a theme song to go with that? I would walk 1,000 miles.
I think
something like that.
Yeah. I Would Walk 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton.
Oh, jeez, I didn't think of that one.
Aerosmith, Walk This Way.
All right, I'm going to cut you off there.
Mark, stop. But no, any final thoughts about this? I just thought it was a lot of fun because I really like the way, especially for data analysis, the way David Robert Mitchell did a great job with the locations in the town. I did some guesswork with Whitefish Point, but it works out according to the statements that are made in this movie.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, I'm happy saying that this thing walks at a 20-minute mile.
Yeah, I think you had a good recipe here. I mean, you're talking about a few different factors that contributed, right? You're talking about a scene and setting like Detroit that's very real to people and relatable and are easy to visualize, unlike, like a Gotham, which is a hodgepodge of different cities in the U.S. And then you've got a title really that just lends itself to this thesis, right? Like it's called It Follows. So, what's involved exactly? Like it's not meant for you to think too terribly hard about, but when you really start to unpack it as you have, it is interesting to sort of dissect the sort of minutia of what's involved with, I guess what we'd call a pod, or at least a body hopper entity, and what goes into the work, right? Because it's scary to us, but we only see slices of its journey, and I suppose that's for our benefit, because good grief, man, some of this data is real dry.
Have you seen that movie Jerry, where it's just Matt Damon and Casey Affleck walking for hours? That would be the It Follows movie. Just watching it chug along.
I can't say I have, but I'm pretty sure I'll enjoy It Follows way more.
I gotta say, though, before we head out, after doing all this data, that the creature still scares the crap out of me. And so most of the time when I do this data, I end up kind of thinking the villains become kind of cuddly and fun. But I'm still scared of this.
Yeah, me too. I think it ends in a great way, sort of a lingering, melancholic shot on that suburban sidewalk. It's just so perfectly framed, too, and that just makes you wonder to what lengths, literally, will this force of nature go.
I love it. Hey, so thanks for joining me on this first episode. We're going to come back next week, and we are